approximately 600 trees and shrubs along the south side. Like I mentioned before, I was planting in very high rainfall events, so we had a very low mortality rate. A riparian health inventory was completed by Cows and Fish in 2020. And we got the results back from that, and it's quite encouraging to see that even what we've planted so far is making a difference on the landscape in terms of the health of the riparian area. Work to do, we still have to plant the north side. That was the goal for this year. But because it's been so dry, I haven't had a chance to even put a shovel in the ground, because anything I plant is probably going to die unless we get some rain, and there's none in the forecast, and it's 40 degrees outside. So yeah, so we still have to plant the north side. Hopefully that gets done this year. Challenges, thistle control. It's going to be an ongoing challenge to control the thistle in there. Grass competition is also a problem at this site. So the seedlings I plant are only about that tall, and by the end of summer, the grass is that tall. So we're working on a couple different ways of maybe addressing that. I'm experimenting with some hemp squares with this site to see if that will help keep the grass down and allow the trees to grow a little bit faster and outpace the grass. Also at the site, I have to be wary of my surroundings a bit. There are livestock guardian dogs out there, so we have a very mutual respect for each other, let's just say that. So there's been times where I've been trapped at the site for an hour or so, waiting for the flock to move on, because the dogs won't let me get to the gate, and that's fine. They're doing their job. They're not pets. They're not friendly, and that's okay. But I do have to be aware of them when I'm out there. So that was the Stein site. So yeah, we're hoping to get that done this year, but we'll see. The second site is the Dual site, and this is in Westlock County. We started planting this site in 2019. It is a wetland and an unnamed stream tributary to the Pembina River. So I don't know if you can really see from the aerial photograph, but it kind of starts on the north side and kind of goes through the quarter, and then it goes into a dugout, and then it eventually flows into a wetland. So this is an organic grain farm, which again has its challenges. We started planting in 2019. So this is what the site looked like when we first started. So you can see my little stakes that are set out to determine the boundaries of the site. So this site, like I said, was a wetland, but before I got to it, it had been continually farmed. So in the dry years, they would try to plow through it and plant something, but because it's a wetland, it's still not very productive. And with the last couple of years where it's been so wet, we've had significant erosion issues of soil. So the producers just decided that they wanted to just kind of let it go back to nature, and they want to be able to enjoy it and be able to go out there and maybe forage some berries and stuff. So means to an end. Doesn't really matter to me why they want to restore it, as long as it gets restored. So yeah, this is what it looked like when we started. As you can see here, they tried to plant wheat into it, and as you can see, it's not really growing all that great. A lot of channeling going on through the soil there, a lot of runoff, a lot of weeds. So this is what it looked like when we first started. The ground is very bare. What's there isn't really maintaining any sort of function. Tansy is a gigantic problem at this site because they're organic. We cannot use any chemical methods to control it. Not that we could anyway, because it's too close to a water body. But tansy is notorious for you can get rid of it and then you got to pull it again the next year. So at this site, I pull tansy do a thorough tansy pull at least twice a year, and it needs to be done every year for probably time eternal to control it. So I'll just go back a little bit to this first photo. So as you can see, the land is quite not hilly, but it does have rolling hills, and most of the wetland is kind of situated at the bottom of the hill. So some of the water that does accumulate is from runoff, but it's also, we believe that there's an underground stream that's feeding this as well. So it's always continually wet, even in the driest parts of summer, which makes it really fun to work in, as I'll show you later. So what we were doing at this site is increasing woody shrub cover. At this site, the producers do not want us to plant any tall trees because they don't want to lose any more land through shading out of their crop, which again, we have to respect their wishes. So we kind of stay within those boundaries of planting kind of smaller shrubs like red osier dogwood, pussy willow, that sort of thing. And then that stream or this whole area kind of feeds itself into what turns into, believe it or not, this. So this picture was taken in July of 2018. So it wasn't unnaturally wet that time of year. This is what it kind of looks like when it's flowing. And then this stream eventually flows into that wetland. So the main area I'm focusing in is at the start of the project site is kind of that wetland area. So I did a couple of before and after photos just to kind of show the progress of this site. So like I said, we started planting in 2019 and these after photos were taken just this year. So the native grass seed that we laid down is taking off very well. As you can see, there's still a little bit of bare ground, but not too much. In terms of the erosion control, we've really kind of got that under control. There's not a lot of runoff happening anymore. The streams have kind of created their channels and that's where they're sticking, which is awesome. We did some willow staking last year to kind of just help maintain those banks and stabilize them a bit. We did it maybe not in the best time. We did it in about late September when the ground was pretty frozen. So I had to hammer those guys in pretty good. I wasn't sure how well they were going to take. But as you can see in the after photo, they took fairly well. So we'll definitely be doing more willow staking out there. So again, this just kind of shows you a before and after picture. So I'm really pleased with the progress of the site so far. We've definitely got a lot of the problems under control in a short amount of time. And just even the fact of just not continually cultivating it, just leaving things to kind of sit there and rejuvenate themselves has really made a big difference at this site. So work to date, like I said, I planted willows, dogwood, chokecherry, highbush cranberry. So I planted those, for one, they're suitable to that site. And for two, like I mentioned, the landowners are interested in doing a bit of a food forest. So those are for them and also to increase the biodiversity and help the birds out and stuff. So we planted approximately 300 trees and shrubs in the wetland area and wetland edge. We did have, checking on some of the shrubs here, we did have high occurrence of browse, but they are coming back fairly well. So that's not too bad. We seeded the entire area to a native wetland grass mix. And this site also got a riparian health inventory from cows and fish last year. So work to do, we need to add some more shrubs to increase the biodiversity. And like I mentioned before, tansy pull all the time. So if you look at the top photo there, you can see the little willows that are naturally sprouting on their own. But then for every willow that pops up, there's got to be at least 10 tansy plants. So that's kind of a, yeah, it's good and bad at the same time. Good that things are rejuvenating naturally, but if we don't keep that tansy under control, it's going to be all for nothing. So it's a lot of work. Challenges, like I mentioned, tansy. I have a love-hate relationship with this project site. I love it because it's highly visible to the public. It's doing so great on its own, but it is very difficult to work in. Like I said, even in the driest of days, driest of months, it's still a soupy mess out there. So there's been times where I've literally just abandoned my rubber boots and just go sock feet and plant that way because it's sometimes you get bogged down with the boots actually. So across all my project sites, and I just did a quick tally. So since we started in 2014, we've started or finished 16 different riparian improvement sites across my three counties, so Barrhead, Westlock, and Athabasca. The county Barrhead has the majority at 7 sites. But all of them have their challenges. Weed control is a problem across all of them. So disturbed sites breed weeds. We have to, it's just a fact of the matter that we go into a site knowing that there's going to be some sort of weed control that needs to exist. Money, so fencing, planting, all that stuff costs money. It's a challenge sometimes to find a balance of spending all your time writing grants and administering them and actually doing the work. So I have to try to find that balance for all my sites and take that into consideration when I take on project sites. That's why there's the waiting list. I wish there wasn't. I wish I could help everyone who wants to take part in these projects, but just the feasibility of it, we have to have a waiting list. And that sucks because every year that goes by is potentially more environmental damage that's happening. So I wish there wasn't a waiting list. Weather is another problem. So we're kind of at extremes here. This was the Stein site last year. I couldn't plant it for half the year because it was flooded, even basically till the beginning of August. So it kind of delays things. And now I'm looking at the opposite end of the spectrum where it's so dry I can't plant. So the last couple of years have been a bit of a challenge trying to find that balance. Also, kind of a funny story. It wasn't just the sites that were flooded, it was also my tree yards. So there was a point last year where I tried to go and grab some trees to plant out at a site I figured I could get into, and I sunk to my knees in the tree yard and got stuck. And I was about 2 minutes away from calling my supervisor to come and get me out. And I eventually just, like I did at my dual site, I just kicked off the boots and kind of crawled out of there. But yeah, weather is definitely a challenge and something that needs to be considered if anyone's thinking of taking on these kind of projects. But why do we do it? I think it's really important that we do projects. It's not, I realize that we're not going to solve the world's problems by doing a couple project sites, but what it does do is creates a conversation about things. It creates a conversation about biodiversity. It creates a conversation about sustainable agriculture, and it gives agriculture a positive light. A lot of times agriculture gets a bad rap for not being environmentally friendly. Sometimes it's deserved, sometimes it's absolutely not. So every time I can kind of show agriculture in a positive light and maybe encourage other producers to take part in their own projects. It doesn't have to be a gigantic replanting projects, even just fencing off a riparian area, getting an offsite water. For every producer that I help with stuff like that, I know that there's producers out there doing it on their own. So they don't get the recognition. So doing these project sites gives agriculture the recognition that there are people doing good things. And sometimes people just need a little help along the way. So sometimes I think these projects are a bit intimidating to people when really they don't need to be. Yeah, so the picture on the right is a picture of a boreal chorus frog that I took out at the dual site this year as I was getting stuck in the mud. He wasn't cooperating to take a good picture, but it just kind of shows that if you kind of let nature rejuvenate itself and maybe help it out along the way, things can return back to a healthy level pretty quick. So that's my presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. And there's my contact information at the bottom if anyone needs to contact me for anything. And thanks to the Athabasca Watershed Council for giving me the opportunity to talk about my project sites. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa. I mean, we really appreciate all the work you do. And I love in your presentation how you talked about the details and the challenges that you come across, because those type of things I don't think we all know about, just like your challenges with the dogs and your
Yeah.
trying to get out of your tree yard. I see that one comment says that Lisa needs some hip waders.